So, Richard, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate you taking your time to be here. And I just want to quickly give a brief introduction because it's important to know Richard's amazing expertise and how much he's going to share with us. So, Richard Sutton is a health and performance consultant who has advised top athletes, Olympic teams, and international sports federations on pain management and athletic development. He also consults to leading corporations on developing stress resilience and is the author of the book, The Stress Code, From Surviving to Thriving, a scientific model for stress resilience. Now, seems perfect, especially what's going on with lockdown and also Stress Awareness Month, to be discussing your book. So I was just wondering, personally, how do you slow down and manage your own stress?
So that's a question I get asked quite often, and I think your passion for understanding stress and for writing a book about it and professionally basically operating in that space is very much managed first the journey into self and understanding how you cope with stress and how to successfully manage it. And fundamentally, I kind of have this whole strategic plan in terms of managing stress. And I think the first place to start is understanding mindset, how powerful one's mind is and one's attitudes are in terms of being able to cope and overcome difficult situations. Fundamentally, if we see things in a positive context, it translates to very different reality physiologically, which ultimately translates to a emotionally different reality. The next step really for me is a behavioral one, a shift. We often get in this trap, or we often get in this mode or methodology of behavior, and that is to introvert and become very insular when we get stressed and we feel very overwhelmed. And that whole insular effect and whole insular behavioral set is almost antagonistic to how we've been able to overcome the challenges of our historic past, whether it's pandemics or food shortages or wars. We've always banded together, we've come together, and that's been part of our strength, is our unity and our synergies and our galvanization. So that is a really a big element. And so behavior is the second part in terms of how I manage stress effectively. Is when I feel overwhelmed, I reach out as much as possible, share the experience as much as possible, and encourage others to do so as well. And the funny thing is that we have this incredible molecular shift, this change in our neurochemistry and hormonal state when we reach out and when we connect, when we stress. So if we support others during our crisis, we release this powerful molecule known as oxytocin, which buffers stress and improves our behavior and improves our physical state, and it does a whole bunch of different things. So that's a very powerful aspect. But the most important lever, I feel, is the ability to control the uncontrollable. And we assume that stress is beyond our control and out of our control. And the one thing I will agree with is the fact that the external factors and the external sources of stress, the perceived source of stress, are very much out of our control. So whether it is high demands from work or long working hours, in some respects, we can't control that. But what we can control is our stress response itself. It is completely modifiable. So what we have is this incredible opportunity where we can pull on a lever, we can pull on a system known as the vagus nerve, and within a few seconds, when I say a few seconds, 30 seconds, we're able to down-regulate our stress response. And we can do this whenever we feel overwhelmed and whenever we feel physically challenged and emotionally challenged. And this is a big leverage point. And the activities that will stimulate the system, which I allude to in the book, are activities that stimulate a specific nerve. And that nerve has a specific chemical function. It releases acetylcholine. And what tends to happen under these conditions is we see downregulation of heart rate, downregulation of blood pressure. We see slowing of respiration, sweatiness on the palms and skins diminishes. And this is through activities like meditation and breathing and yoga and a whole variety of these alternate therapies, which have sometimes been frowned upon. But in a crisis like this, you really can't find anything more valuable than the ancient wisdom that comes with them. And So that's the third arm, and the last arm is really just looking after one's health as best as one can. And the demands are not going to change. The circumstances are unlikely to change. Our past reality is not coming back. It's a future reality we've got to adapt to. And the healthier we are, the more successful we'll be in adapting successfully, emotionally and physically and psychologically in this new set, this new reality that we live in. And that fundamentally is how I strategize and really approach stress in my life and the life of those who I'm involved in.
That's amazing. I wish I was able to do that. That's because actually I think you kind of alluded to that, which is, that our world has become quite stressful. And do you find that our world favors being over aroused at the expense of like our mental health?
So I think that the whole mental health question I think it's probably one of the most pressing issues at the moment. And if you look at some of the stats coming out of Europe, I mean, my new book, The Stress Proof, was very much centered on what's going on globally. I looked at the UK and I looked at Europe and I looked at the US, and obviously regionally, I'm from South Africa, so I looked at, and the statistics are, I mean, it's jaw dropping, and a lot of the statistics are pre-COVID, which has amplified the entire set. So if you look at statistics in Europe, I mean, we're looking at 1 in 3 individuals are suffering from a mental health issue, and you go to the States, I think it's 1 in 5. The UK is sitting at around 1 in 4, and these are all under. I don't think they're overstated figures at all, and it's encompassing anxiety and depression and sleeplessness and so on. But there is a very strong correlation between stress and mental health, and that whole relationship, exceptionally strong. And stress has been known to be a big driver, and certain stresses have not been known to be an exceptionally big driver. The one stress that is particularly prevalent in inducing a decrease in mental health or a decline in mental health is work-family conflict. And I think we're all struggling with that right now. I mean, even while I was talking, I heard the kids in the background screaming, and I was debating whether I was going to have to stop and ask them to just move along a little bit. So this work-family conflict is something that we can all relate to, and that increases according to, there was a really big meta-analysis. Teams at Harvard and Stanford University came together looking at different stresses and their implications on different health systems. And what they found was that type of conflict, which we're all subjected to now, anyone who's working right now, increases your risk of mental health issues by 190%. So I think that, certainly stress is a big contributing factor in mental health. And if we can reduce or successfully manage our stress more effectively, I think it will take some of the burden off mental health. I mean, just to throw some additional, it's just so passionate about the numbers, is that if there's financial pressure, it increases the risk of mental health, developing a mental health disorder by 90%. Long working hours, high demand, 60%. Lack of support in one's life, 38% increase in risk of mental health issues. Lack of control and uncertainty, 42%. And we're not exposed to one of those issues right now. We're not exposed to only financial pressure or only long working hours or only lack of support or only work-family conflict. We're confronted with everything. And so what does that say about the challenges that we're confronted with now? And that is the biggest issue is mental health.
Yeah, no, definitely. And actually that really sort of ties into what I was thinking of next, which is for people who are isolated and in lockdown, what do you think is the best way of coping with that level of stress?
The isolation and lockdown, I think that's the obvious answer is, really connect to people. That's the obvious answer is to connect in any which way, form that is safe and you're able to, and those relationships that you have to nurture. But in many instances, people don't have connection. And what we're seeing now is a pandemic of loneliness that exists around the planet. And there's this assumption, and I might be off on a couple of percentages and figures, but there's the assumption that it's the older generations that are already suffering under these conditions, and the assumption is wrong. My generation, I'm 49 at the moment, and my generation, I think the prevalence of loneliness is around 50%.
Wow.
When you start going up to millennials and Generation Z, it increases well above 70%.
Wow.
So the generations that are really struggling with loneliness are the younger generations. In fact, they've been given a really raw deal. They've entered the job market, and the job market's really recalibrated and collapsed and changed, and it's continued to change. It is really difficult for that generation, the Generation Zs at the moment, and some of the millennials. So in terms of overcoming loneliness, I think that it's very individual. It's a very difficult question to answer successfully without knowing the person's circumstances. But if there is, if they are working and they do have secure employment, I think one of the best ways for leaders specifically to help their teams overcome loneliness is try and get teams to work on projects together, to try and collaborate on projects together. I think it's also very valuable for leaders to get their teams to study and learn and upskill together. It really helps to foster and develop relationships. And I think that those are two ways leaders can bring people together over and above the usual kind of team meetings and the team collaborations and the things that go on in work. But the learning skills up regulation, recalibration, as well as the shared projects and shared responsibility is so powerful.
No, and exactly. And I was actually wondering that, which is, how do you think leaders, it could be in the workspace or any kind of space in companies, perhaps, how do you think they can gain control in order to kind of reduce stress for their employees?
Well, that's an amazing question, and you can just stop me if I'm going too long. But so what we're seeing is the drivers of stress at the moment. And there's this assumption that it is exclusively COVID-19, and it's not. It's the combination of COVID-19 superimposed upon the fourth industrial revolution. So that really is the fundamental problem. So what we got is a combination set causing economic downturn. We've got this pressure on companies and teams for productivity, and there's a decline in productivity that is universal across the world. I mean, it's just crazy that you think technology should be making things more effective and more efficient, and it's not. So we're seeing this pressure for productivity, which is creating high performance cultures, which is burning people out. You've got the future jobs really insecure. There was that great Oxford study, looking at, I think it was 702 professions over the next 10 years. And what they found was that 47% of the professions are not going to exist in 10 years at this rate. So the future of jobs is a big stress. Skills instability, about 50% of the workforce right now, and that is going to have to reskill over the next couple of years. And reskilling doesn't entail a quick weekend course or a 3-day seminar. Reskilling is going to require significant learning. And then you've got the whole recalibration of work as a primary stress, and that's the gig economy. Everything's becoming kind of freelance, and companies are going to kind of build their workforce according to the demands and then shrink their workforce. And so much of the security that once existed in the workplace is diminishing. And that is the fundamental stress. But there's an interesting philosophy it's a philosophy that comes from Aikido. And it's not about meeting force with force, economic downturn, fix the economy. I mean, it's a great concept, but it's really difficult to apply. The principle is basically kind of find the flaws and find the weakness, and basically that's where the attack has got to be launched and manifest. And what I mean by that is that you have this economic downturn, and that is causing a whole set of different things. It's causing work-family conflict and higher demands and lack of control and effort-reward imbalances and employment insecurity and long working hours and low support. And that is where we've got to launch into as leaders and as businesses. If we're able to target those elements, we can certainly modify work-family conflict. We can certainly modify demands. We can give people more authority and more control. We can rewrite the psychological contract and provide more employment security through a number of different leadership ways and behaviors. We can make people feel more valued. We can reduce working hours by creating more efficiencies in terms of meeting behaviors and distractions through multitasking. We can provide more support, instrumental. These are the ways that we're able to adjust and modify this very challenging set that exists.
Yeah, and actually, I think there's a part where you talk about acute stress and chronic stress. And actually, I was wondering, because I'm like, is there a way to actually reduce or reverse chronic stress at all?
So the thing is, the minute the stress is over, the stress is reduced fundamentally. But I think what we're referring to here is the effects of chronic stress on our system. So what we have is a situation where when we get stressed, we release stress hormones, cortisol and adrenaline. And this is a very natural response. And it's a response that keeps us vigilant, and it keeps us focused, and it keeps us energetic and strong. And, the short-term effects of stress are very powerful and very necessary for our survival and for thriving and adapting and coping. And that's all well and fine. But when we get into a scenario like we confronted with now, where we've had this massive recalibration of the way we live and the way we relate to others and the way we behave, and everything that once existed is now being questioned, and we're rethinking everything. And it's evoking a tremendous sense of anticipatory worry, uncertainty, fears, which is triggering the stress axis. And a system that's designed to be on and off sporadically and intermittently is now being engaged continuously and progressively. And this is the problem. So the system that once protected us is now the system that's causing a decline in our emotional health and our physical health and our mental health, as I alluded to earlier. So the question is what do we do about it? And of course, if we can remove the stresses, that would be very helpful. And that's it's a big factor in terms of leadership, because so many of the stresses that we experience today are related to social dynamics, society, workplace, and leaders in the workplace, leaders from a political standpoint, have the potential to really modify the human experience. And I think this is an incredible gift that they have, and a big responsibility that they also have. But in terms of if we've been subjected to this high stress and it has affected us, it has caused physical weakness, it's caused emotional volatility and instability. And if this has surfaced and manifested, we've got to embark on a rebuilding phase. Basically, relook at our lives, slow down, shut the stress axis down as frequently as possible on a daily basis through meditation, through yoga, deep breathing, whatever your preference is. We've also got to start reconsidering our diet. Don't eat foods that evoke further stress. So sugars is a good example, processed sugars, and in many individuals, gluten-containing foods, and in many individuals, dairy. So if we start looking at the foods that could evoke immune reactions and stress responses, and going into a more kind of natural eating plan and a healthier eating plan, that one will start the process of our rebuilding efforts. But at the same time, if we exercise more frequently, we get out, instead of exercising 2-3 times a week, we start moving to 5-6 times a week, and we start inducing changes on a neurochemical level basis. Fundamentally, what happens is when we do aerobic exercise, a walk, a jog, something more strenuous, we change our neurochemistry very profoundly. We release certain proteins that are responsible for building the brain and recalibrating the brain and recalibrating the body. And we can take advantage of that through frequent exercise. And if we are burnt out and we do feel a sense of adrenal exhaustion, obviously through the guidance of a healthcare practitioner, we can take certain nutritional supplements like adaptogenic herbs that can really buffer kind of many of the effects and put us back on the right path. But there's so many factors in that rebuilding process. But to answer your question, we can come back from it completely. We're able to rebuild ourselves. The human body is incredibly adaptable, very, very agile, and we can create realities simply through choice. And it's that choice that really matters.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it's so true. All the different sort of avenues we could essentially adopt, but I guess sometimes with stress, it kind of blinds you a little bit to what your next move is going to be. But I think when you mentioned acute stress, I was just wondering, like, how can you use acute stress to kind of spur you on to achieve your goals?
So I think that's the thing, is that it boils down to mindset. So if one embraces the stress response, so when you feel your heart pound and your palms sweat and your respiration increase, when you have that experience and you feel that those jitters and a little bit of angst, know that it's your body, or understand that it's your body's way of saying that I've got this, I'm there to help you. I'm mobilizing reserves, I'm mobilizing mental acuity and clarity. I am creating hyper-focused states, hyper-vigilant, virulent states. So it's your body's way of saying that I've got this, I can do this. And the thing is to embrace that experience. So, if you're under pressure and you've got to get a document out, or you're in a meeting that requires a high stakes meeting that requires a tremendous acuity and verbal fluency, that's a time to use it. And when one steps out of the meeting, this is the trick now, is to say that, do I need to be in this aroused state? And if not, shut it down. Go to your office, spend 15 minutes on a brief meditation, or 5 or 4 breathing exercises, and just down regulate your system. And if you need it again, use it again. But the stress response is an amazing response if it's capitalized on in the short term, as opposed to being turned on indefinitely. And the longer we stress, the harder it is to shut it down. And that's where this conscious awareness of shutting it down becomes so important.
Definitely. And actually, I wanted to talk about that situation you were in with the tennis star in New York. I think it was before the US Open, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah.
and he seemed to be struggling. And I was just wondering, in that instance, how did you stop the stress from overwhelming you?
So the reality is I didn't. I'd like to say I did, but it was too overwhelming because everything was at stake. To give a little bit of background of the story is, I was working with an exceptionally talented player who had an obstacle, a hiccup that could jeopardize one of the most important events of their year, where there's huge sponsorships at stake, and the figures are enormous. And I was in a situation where I had to find a result, and I wasn't finding results. I didn't really have the skill set that was required in order to overcome the challenges he was confronted with. In fact, very few people did. And what happened was I just got put into a situation where, unless I found an answer, it would be the end of my career, because sports is very reputational. You literally get only one shot every time, and the pressure is immense, but very rewarding at the same time. And what happened is I just went into this hypervigilant state. I stopped sleeping. All I could fixate on was finding a solution. I had energy that I didn't know existed. I didn't need sleep. I was completely single-minded, and it drove me to a solution over a period of a couple of weeks. And as it turned out, he had a very successful tournament, and it was a catalyst to bigger things in my career. But were it not for the fact that I was as stressed as I was, I don't think I would have had the resources and the energy and the drive and the motivation to find solutions. And that's where stress can be extremely beneficial.
Yes, no, definitely. And I really appreciate you talking with me about this, because obviously, hopefully this conversation wasn't stressful for you. And, and that's the thing, because it's so important, I think, right now to have this conversation, because I feel like a lot of people are feeling a lot of heat, especially given what's happening. And, I thought for this month, Stress Awareness Month, it will be really useful to actually start digging into this topic a little bit more. So I really appreciate you sharing your time with me and giving me your expertise, because it was extremely helpful. And yes, so if there's any other suggestions you'd like to make, I'd really welcome them.
Yeah, so I think that, where I want to kind of land the conversation is in the fact that stress can be a huge advantage. A lot of our most challenging times in life are often met with incredible outcomes following the challenges, not diminishing the trauma and the pain that comes with it, or the heartache that is often associated with these challenges. But we do grow. It does push us. We do grow emotionally. We do grow spiritually, physically. On every level we grow through these challenges. And I think we're in one of those sets at the moment. Life will return to a sense of normality in time, as history has showed us with previous pandemics. And we're going to see the world very differently in a very different context. And we're going to be very different. We're going to be a lot stronger in many respects. So I think the first kind of reality check is that stress will pass, and it is not exclusively a negative thing. the second message is that we've got the power to control it. We, at any point that we want to, we can shut the physiological effect down, and with that comes the psychological and emotional effect, and that is done through stimulating this vagus nerve system, and we can do it several times a day. We can do it once a day, whenever you feel you need it, but just really gain control. And by gaining control, you change your path and you change your destination. It's one of those things where it's very forward-looking, if we take this approach, as opposed to looking back and becoming an object that has no control over path and destination. So I think that it's a very powerful narrative that, you know, that stress isn't the enemy. It's actually there. It's aligned to your success, and the main thing is just keep it on a leash to a certain extent.
Yeah, no, indeed. Again, thank you so much, Richard, and I couldn't agree more with that sentiment. So really, really appreciate it.